Okay, hello everybody. I'm John Steinert. I'm the CMO of TechTarget, and today's webinar is about driving short-term quota attainment by aligning marketing to sales. I wanted to say a couple more things about this cover slide before I move on to logistics. On the left, you see a picture that we're going to be repeating in different ways throughout the course of the webinar. That's a picture of people building castels or human towers in northern Spain. It's part of Catalonian festival culture. And I think you'll see that there are a lot of connections between that and marketing and sales. And if you want, you should go Google that stuff because there's some really great videos about how they do it and the fun they have doing it. I wanted to welcome Nancy Nardin, our guest for today. Nancy is the founder of Smart Selling Tools and one of the great authorities on sales practice and sales process in the world. If you haven't been to Smart Selling Tools, you owe it to yourself to go there and check out what Nancy talks about, all the vendors she interviews, and all the hints and guidance she can give. So let me do some logistics now. You're probably all used to this stuff, I hope. The panelists, myself and Nancy, will answer questions live at the end of the session, and my colleague Garrett will be monitoring your questions and comments throughout, and we'll try to answer them immediately. If we don't get to your questions, we'll do our best to answer them via email afterwards. Please submit all your questions in the Q&A feature in Zoom below. And if you have a comment directed to a particular panelist or the host, you can do that in the chat feature. So now I'm going to do a little setup before handing it over to Nancy. This is the world we're living in now, folks. It's the pandemic world still. And travel experts are saying, with respect to field sales activity and face-to-face events and that kind of thing, that it's going to be at least 3 years before business travel actually comes back fully. In the meantime, McKinsey did this research, and in it, 3,700 something companies basically said that in 2021, they expect fully digital only or digital and telephone only communication. So no events and virtually no face-to-face selling. So that's the reality we're facing right now. And underneath that, there's a bit more going on. All of us are probably experiencing delays and smaller deals overall, or many of us. And with the very biggest of our target companies, they're not really looking to put in a lot of big projects. They're still in a 90 or 120-day kind of project cycle. They triage projects very carefully. Gartner says, and Topo within Gartner says, that throughout 2021, 90% of companies less than $1 billion, so most of the companies in the world, are only going to be focusing on tactical projects, and they're going to continue delaying long-term strategic initiatives. But in the meantime, all of us have to make a living, and our salespeople need to make their quota. And those quotas are very real every 90 days. So with that, I'd like to ask Nancy my first question. On the left, you can see that sometimes these towers collapse, almost like a pandemic, and our sales models sort of collapse in on us. People at the top wear helmets. Very few people get seriously hurt. But Nancy, these challenges of different types of projects and the lack of major projects really affect sales. And how does that actually change what you think marketing could be doing or should be doing?
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks for setting the stage, John. One big change is that sellers need marketers to provide data and technology that supports the entire pipeline and not just the top of the funnel. So think in terms of revenue gen now as the end goal and not just demand gen. So with what you said, with buyers postponing strategic projects and prioritizing the 90 to 100-day tactical projects, sellers need to respond faster and not get caught up in deals that are less likely to close and less likely to close quickly. So they'll need to prioritize their time and their activities more carefully to impact their quarterly revenue objectives. And they can't do that without data and technology. So I want to take a quick minute, if I can, and just talk about another change that's been brewing for a while now. And it's another reason why sales needs help from marketing further into the pipeline. And it has to do with the numbers game that everyone is familiar with. The numbers game is focused on volume, pure and simple. Want more prospects to engage with sales? Well, it's simple, get more prospects. If you want more prospects to convert to opportunities, then make more outreach attempts. And that worked because there was always this linear response, right? If you get 100 prospects, I think the next slide, John, has some of these numbers. So if you get 100 prospects and 50 connects, and in the end, that gets you 1 closed deal, just double the number of prospects and you'll get 2 closed deals. If you want 3 closed deals, you triple the number of prospects that you need. And that worked for a long time.
I'll always remember something a sales leader at SAP told me. He said, you know, marketing, you're always promising me stuff, but I have to do X, Y, and Z to realize it. And he said, sales is much easier. I know exactly what I'm going to get if I add 1 more salesperson.
Okay. Well, that's a good backup for this numbers game. And that was the case too, right? That, I guess that's not in the formula, but you could certainly add more salespeople, and that's how many companies do it. But what's happening now is that the formula, and this has happened for a little while now, right? The formula has changed over time. The new numbers game factors in something else, the increase in the number of touch points that are required to make every connection. All right, so that number continues to increase. In fact, Topo says that it now takes 18 dials to connect with a prospect. And they recommend a sequencing pattern that includes 21 touches over the course of 24 days. So that flies in the face of what's happening in the market today with the in-quarter focus that we have. There's something else too, which is that you know, there's a reason why the numbers game, you know, the number of touches keeps increasing, right? Why we have to continue to make more and more attempts. And that is that technology has made it possible for SDRs to make a lot more phone calls and send a lot more emails. So if you, yeah, there we go. So what's that number now? I mean, think about the buyers and the position they're in. Technology's made it possible for SDRs to make 10 times the number of phone calls and to send 100 times the number of emails. So that's a 1,000-fold increase in the volume of activities. Remember, I talked about this is been all about volume. Then you add to that the growing number of SDRs or reps that are performing these activities, and something happens. There's just so much volume now that you hit a diminishing return. And it's, I think, time to change from focusing on higher volume of activity to getting a better outcome from that activity. Again, moving from demand gen to revenue gen.
So I'm with you there. I mean, we've all seen it as everybody has moved into the online channel. We've all gotten a lot more emails, and it's clearly starting to plateau. And if the long-term deals are harder to get or they don't really exist, we're all crowding into this short-term space. So we've talked a lot about in the past, especially me in the CMO space, about alignment. But in the past, we talked about aligning with sales. So we changed that for this presentation, and now we're saying aligning to sales. Can you dig into that a little bit, Nancy? Because it could look subtle, but I don't think it's so subtle.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. I mean, it's just a small word, but there is a reason why John and I wanted to focus in on that slight change in verbiage. And I'm going to get back to this pyramid that John talked about. And as he said, they're called castels. And when you build them, it requires a lot of people who play very specific roles. And that's sort of like building revenue. So you can see the people on the ground in the foreground here in this picture. And what you can't see is the overhead, which is really fascinating, actually beautiful formation where they're all, leaning in a certain way, crossing arms, and really supporting the formation with the right kind of pressure so that these other people can start to build the pyramid themselves. Now, the bigger, stronger people form the first level of the pyramid. And then if you look closely, you'll see a small child on the left leg of the pyramid climbing up to the top. So think of that as the salesperson. And I realize not because I called it a small child, but because they have to be very agile and they have a very specific role. So when your marketing is aligning with sales, they're building that foundation. When they're aligning to sales, they're actually participating in that pyramid so that the person climbing up can close that deal faster. So, and we'll continue to kind of play out this difference in words here. And one of the ways this plays out is with a sales pyramid. And I call this the sales hierarchy of needs. And this pyramid will shed light on how you can align to sales beyond just the funnel. So
Yeah,
you've heard of
Nancy,
Maslow's. Yeah.
So Nancy, I got confused when you first shared this with me because I didn't understand the difference between a sales pyramid or a sales hierarchy of needs and the kinds of needs I was thinking about, the needs of the customer. This is very specific of what a salesperson needs to be able to do, right?
That's right. And it's different than the funnel. And I'm going to explain how that is. And I don't think people have typically thought of a pyramid or what is it that sales really needs. This is not a funnel. It's very much like Maslow's hierarchy, in that, for instance, the most fundamental level to success is the very ground level, who to sell to, right? If you can't stay alive in Maslow's pyramid, right, of hierarchy, then nothing else matters. Well, the same is kind of true in the who to sell to level. And I want to point out that this is about prioritizing my selling time. Okay. It's not about who to market to. It's about how should I prioritize the people that I should be calling so I can get the most from my territory. And then just briefly before you go on, John, I'll just, take people through the next level. So level 2 is, now that I know how to prioritize, how can I get them to engage? I've just talked about why that is problematic. 3 is how to demonstrate and quantify value. 4 is how to close. And 5 is how do I sell more? How do I renew, upsell, and cross-sell? So those are the fundamental needs of a seller.
Yeah, that's good for marketers to think about because it's so different from how we generally think about what does the customer need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so here I wanted to compare the typical marketing funnel with the sales hierarchy. You'll see, this is Serious Decisions demand unit waterfall that folks are probably familiar with. And marketing's focus is on driving as much volume as possible into the funnel. So after all of the stages and you get down to qualified demand, that's where SDRs qualify the lead. And then the resulting pipeline is where AEs or field reps take over. And by the way, we're going to kind of use AEs and field reps interchangeably here. But I want you to notice that it's the second to last, or the pipeline is the second to last in the marketing funnel. That's sort of the one of the last steps, but it's the very beginning of the sales process if you're an AE. So imagine what would happen to the human pyramid if once the salespeople started climbing it, the people at the base, the marketers and SDRs simply let go and walked away. And that, I think, is the point that I really want everyone to take with them today, that it's an imperative that marketing and including SDRs play a role further into the pipeline. So let's talk about SDRs and what are the implications for SDRs. It's pretty clear what SDRs did and what AEs did before 2020, right? So we have this demarcation before and after 2020, where SDRs qualified the demand and then they pass it off to AEs to qualify the opportunity. Now when we're really focused on closing revenue in the quarter, we need to accelerate the process by moving some of these tasks upstream. SDRs need to be even more productive by not only qualifying the leads, but also opportunities. And that includes not just qualifying an individual lead, but rather qualifying an account or a buying team within the account.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
that leaves AEs to focus on closing the deals.
So you really do mean qualifying opportunities. So what is passed from the SDR to the real sales professionals is something much better. It's much further along.
That's right.
So I think I get it. I think you said it well when you said you're going to move parts of the process upstream. And really, even though when you show the demand unit waterfall, you said marketing needs to focus lower, it is, when you connect that to the idea of the human pyramid, it is marketing working right hand in hand with sales to build towards the close event. You know, those kids climbing up. So I wanted to get a little bit more specific now, and I wanted to ask you, what are some specific actions that marketing should do right away? I wanted you to drill into that for us.
Yeah. Well, I want marketers to help reps spend their time on high value sales interactions. Okay. And when I'm talking about marketers, it's not necessarily demand gen, right? Because there's lots of different pieces and parts of marketers. There's sales enablement, there's product marketing. But all parts of marketing should start to think about, what do we need to do? How can we contribute so that reps can spend their time on these higher value sales interactions? And that means that they'll need to fortify levels 1 through 3 with data and technology. So sales can focus on levels 4 and 5. So let me just explain a little bit in terms of the who to sell to. So this functions on 2 levels, the account level, and it functions on the buying group level. So notice I'm not talking about the individual leads, because the processing of individual leads is the old volume game. But we really need to look for buying groups, because we don't have the luxury of negatively dispositioning leads and saying, well, they're not responding, what more can I do? Instead, we want that, or, you know, if we want that revenue, we need to look for the opportunity across the account. And then if there's an opportunity there, then you go on to, how do we get them to engage? And here there are 2 points. There's how many people are on the buying team and who are they? And what the heck do you say to them? To accelerate the process, you have to be much smarter going in. So you want to use insight to engage better.
So were you going to talk about number 3? Because, you know, I fundamentally as a demand gen marketer, believe I can help. And I'm going to show in a second on the who to sell to and how to engage. But broader in the marketing organization or the sales enablement organization, there is this task of quantifying ROI so that the salesperson can do that for the customer. I think that's really about what we call solution marketing, or product marketing needs to work on that. So we're trying to take a lot of the work here off the back of the field sales rep. I think that's the point. And so we're actually saying, we're in this together, we're building the tower together, and we're going to actually take on different tasks than we've done before, or at least put the emphasis on different tasks. And we're going to do it with an eye towards near-term revenue and closing that revenue out in the quarter. Have I got that right?
That's right. That's right. And I'll just add for number 3, you're right. It's product marketing, it's sales enablement, getting together to really focus on content and tools that will help the reps quantify the ROI for the customer, because that's how you're going to be relevant, and that's how you're going to be able to close the deal faster.
Okay, so I always like to talk a little bit about TechTarget, because that's what I'm responsible for. So I want to show people sort of where we are in terms of how intent data can really help SDRs know who to sell to and how to engage. I think you might all be familiar with the fact that what we do is we prioritize accounts. We put them in priority order, and then we rank them based on different elements of engagement. So that's the first thing. That's very common to the world of intent data. But the second thing, which is even more important now for closing revenue, is the idea that we let you peer inside the account and look at the people within it, and we can rank them against each other. So where this really gets important is when you look at the individual people, we can start to tell you what they care about. So you see in the red on the lower right there, highlights about what this account cares about based on what people are actually consuming. Now, this is not just marketing stuff. In fact, it's largely editorial material that they're consuming. The marketing stuff comes into play when we start talking about what they've engaged with from you as a tech vendor doing marketing with TechTarget. So these kinds of engagement signals combined with the signals about what people actually care about, what they've been reading, is what enables an SDR to know who to reach out to at the account level and within the account in the buying group, and then what to say to them. Now, from the AE perspective, we put this same kind of information into the CRM system. And then working with sales ops, we set it up and we filter it down even more. What we're looking at here is a customer who is in the security space and sells 3 types of solutions. So in number 1, you see where you'd find it in your CRM system. Number 2, you'd see how it would be set up to focus on one of 3 security solutions. And we do this to help the AE focus. The AE, we want the AE to focus in a period on database security. So we filter what she sees on that. Then within the data security solution category, we again rank, but then we do 2 more things. We filter the list even more. So in number 3, in orange, you can see that there are 19 active prospects in this account. And 19 people in a single account is a heck of a lot to focus on as an AE. So we're going to go and filter this further for the AE because we know that the types of people we need to talk to, most importantly here, are architects and directors. So pretty senior people in the security space. And then we also want them to focus on connecting when the prospect is connecting with us. So we're going to filter on recent activity. They're active on the entry points. Those are the things we know we succeed with as a tech vendor, putting myself in the seat of the security vendor. We know that they downloaded our content, and we know that they're actively researching this week. So these people, and here you can see 8 prospects found, are the people we want the AE to go after in this account to accelerate that deal.
Yep. I think here, John, I was just going to talk about the ROI part, but we covered that, so we can move on to the next slide. Yeah, so here we just wanted to wrap up. We're actually at 25 minutes after, the time flies, but we didn't want to leave without giving you some specific suggestions for moving forward. So if volume and activity are no longer enough and marketing needs to fortify levels 1 through 3 in the sales hierarchy, what should you do and why? And so hopefully this slide will be a good handout for you. I think, John, we're recording this, right? So people can listen back to it later. But the first step is to make the decision to become a pipeline partner with sales. AEs can't do everything and still be fast enough to capitalize on in-quarter opportunities. Aligning to sales is the right approach. And you want to focus demand gen metrics on outcomes. Increasing the volume of leads and activities is generating diminishing returns in terms of revenue outcome. And this means you'll need to ensure that both the leads and the activity result in better outcomes. So train your SDRs to qualify opportunities using data and technology that you provide. And now we're talking about identifying multiple accounts, not just dispositioning a lead. And they can do that, but only if they have access to good buying team intent data. And last, help the sellers be more productive by enabling them to prioritize their time on the best opportunities. We can no longer afford to just chase everything. And by prioritizing, you'll give them the speed and the agility that they need to close deals faster. there are a few ways that you can do this. You can dive into the CRM and analyze the win-loss data, and you can analyze the characteristics of opportunities that close. Both of those types of data will indicate where to focus now versus maybe where to focus before the market has made the changes that it's made. And finally, perhaps the easiest and most impactful is to provide intent data and train both the SDRs and AEs on how to use it.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate this a little bit. There's a lot to unpack on this slide. I tend to focus just on the left side. If I just look at building a pipeline partnership, you know, I don't believe that marketing has done that enough to date. And when I constrain the time frame to 90 days, I'm sure that marketing hasn't done that enough today, because that's really not the way we operate. So that is not an easy thing to take on for marketers. But I think, Nancy, it's fair to say that what we're both saying here is, given that the business environment, the business climate is still quite precarious, that we're looking to marketing to do that. So that's kind of a major change. And then number two, the demand gen metrics, in a way, they're kind of similar to the SDR numbers game that you were talking about. It's that the metrics you have may actually prevent you from building a proper pipeline partnership. So you're going to have to look at those metrics and say, hey, do your KPIs allow you to actually change the mix of what you're doing, I think. And so then the last two, identify multiple contacts and prioritize opportunities, are sort of natural things for a field rep to do. But remember, we were saying you're going to move some of those tasks upstream, and you're going to do those for field reps, because what we want field reps to be really good at is closing. And we want to take the other tasks off their plate. That's how we accelerate it. Am I right, Nancy?
That's right. Yep. Those are all excellent points. And, you know, I think the prioritizing opportunities and identifying multiple contacts, those requirements have been there for a while. I don't think COVID really brought that on, because it just is smart business to make sure that you're using your sales capacity wisely, and that you're exploring all of the possible buying opportunities within your territory. But the first two, I think, because of some of the stats that you showed at the beginning, John, are really much more critical now than ever before.
Okay, that's about all the time we have, actually. Garrett, did you get any questions on the back end?
I did. I did. A couple came through during the presentation. Thank you guys so much. It was very informative. The first question, John, I'm going to give this one to you. Aligning to versus aligning with is very subtle. Can you talk about why that distinction matters?
Yeah, you know, as I was building this, I was thinking a lot about, have I made it too subtle here? It's just one word. And I don't think I have, because I've read a lot and I've talked to a lot of clients about aligning with, and I don't think it's achieved what we're talking about here. So what we're really talking about is, how do you accelerate field sales productivity within the quarter? And aligning with can just mean, to me, as a marketer, that I know what sales is trying to do. When I change that to aligning to, I've changed my mental map, because I'm saying I intend to directly impact sales performance. And so it's one word, but I think there's a huge difference. If that word doesn't do it for you, think about what else I'm saying. I'm saying I want marketing to directly serve in-quarter quota attainment. And then you have to figure out, we've given a few hints here about how to do that, but your company needs to make quota every 90 days for the coming year, as it's been working at, you know, every 90 days for the past year. And I think marketing can help. We tried to show a couple ways. Nancy had some good hints. It's now up to you to actually change the mix of what you intend to do so you can more directly impact sales performance.
Great. Thanks, John. Nancy, I'm going to give this one to you. Especially in the wrap up here and throughout, you talked about the need to fortify levels 1 through 3. You didn't talk as much about 4 and 5. Does marketing have a role to play in levels 4 and 5 in the hierarchy of needs?
Yeah, they certainly do. I think a lot of that has to do with similar to level 3, which is that content becomes important, but also, facilitating the messaging, the positioning, understanding what industries, what job titles, what they care about, how to have business conversations and talk about problems and solutions rather than just the product. So that's, I think, where marketing would play. Also, marketing can play in terms of providing data about interactions that current customers are having by reinforcing to current customers why they bought the solution to begin with. So that come renewal time, they are still excited about it. So that may be nurturing current customers. So there's lots of things that marketing can do directly to the customer, but also to support the rep. And then lots of different technologies can come into play as well. Like, for instance, if you've got a deal and you're ready to close it, you want to get that to them for e-signature. You don't want, you want to know where that is in the process. You don't want to let any time go by to risk having that deal go south. Because it's a very tumultuous time and anything can happen. So there's just technologies as well that can come into play in both of those levels.
Yeah, I wanted to say, I'll say something quickly about that. So I think, I hear Nancy being very agnostic about who actually finds and buys the technology. Underneath that, there's something else going on here. This idea of marketing aligning to sales includes understanding and helping sales analyze what's going wrong in sales process. And I think what I hear you saying is, Nancy, is why doesn't marketing become agnostic to who's going to use the technology and just focus on, can we help find the right technology? Can we help find other ways to help sales? It doesn't matter that we're not called sales. Sales can use the help.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I think that's why a lot of companies are starting to use the term revenue instead of marketing or instead of sales, because revenue tends to be an umbrella term that includes or encompasses both marketing and sales. You can't really generate revenue without either one. So if we look at it holistically and start thinking about RevOps or revenue enablement, then maybe that helps us as a culture start to be more aligning to rather than with.
Great. I think we're a little bit over, but there's a couple very good questions that I want to get answered, and we'll do them quickly. And Nancy, along the same veins of what you were just talking about, it makes sense that marketing should provide data to sales. But why should they be the ones to also provide technology to sales?
Okay. Well, that's a good question. And John, as a marketer, I'm really interested in how you would answer this, but I'll give you my take. And that is that marketing is already providing a lot of the technology that sales needs. It's providing sales enablement technology. It's providing some value creation tools. It's certainly populating a lot of the systems that sales use. But one thing that I've noticed is that marketing is very good using technology. They've been doing it a long time. They spend a lot of money on it. I think I even heard a stat that they spend more than IT does or something like that. But anyway, a lot of money. And so they know how to do it. And they also know how to figure out what's working. So they know how to measure the success of it. Sales doesn't have that role apart from sales ops, where they kind of look at administrative types of technologies. Sales it's not really a technology oriented organization. So I think marketing is very well positioned. They've got the expertise. And also they understand the complete customer journey. So I think it really should fall in their hands. What do you think, John?
Well, so it's so fascinating to have these conversations with you, Nancy, because, you are a salesperson, a sales professional by training and by, experience. I am not. I think you're right that marketing people have gotten much better at technology in recent years, the past 10 years. Certainly they're not IT people, but when I hear you use the word marketing, I think you're saying everybody else but the sales team, really. And I'm totally cool with that. And as a CMO, I'd say, yeah, I'll happily be everybody else but the seller. Because I've started to understand, in the last decade, that if sales doesn't win, I don't win. So I've really tried to reorient around not celebrating what I accomplish in marketing and getting on the bus with sales. And then COVID just made that so much more important because it became so much harder. So what we've learned in marketing about technology, to your point, we can share with salespeople. We can say, watch out for this, watch out for this. We can help them select technology and even configure it. And we can help them analyze it. These are all things that are non-selling tasks. I think that's the point you're making. They're
Yes,
non-selling
that's right.
tasks. So they're not really sales. They're part of the infrastructure that is necessary to improve to get to this 90-day quota attainment. And so when I hear you say, yeah, marketing should help, I'll take that on because I know I'm not doing selling, so I must be helping in selling. So I accept that responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. We'll make it quick. We've provided a lot of data to sales teams over the years, but they always seem to prefer to return to cold calling as the go-to tactic. Why do you think that is? John, why don't you answer that one?
Yeah, well, why is cold calling so popular? I think that's the question. And I think Nancy hit on it pretty hard with the idea about the numbers game. It's really simple. And simple things and simple equations are great because, it's like A plus B or A times B equals C, or after A and B comes C. The problem arises when that no longer works, as Nancy was saying. So the thing is that cold calling has never worked well. Some organizations are better than others, and most organizations need to do some of it. But now we're in this problem space where it's really not working. Numbers games, as a rule, are really not working as well because we're all collapsing into one channel, among other reasons. And so part of the issue is that people's belief systems in the numbers game, that their muscle memory are really hard to break. And so but we've got to break them. And so we're right up against, guys, this is not working. There's got to be a better way. And so that's part of what building the pipeline partnership is about, because it is not working that well. We are no longer putting in $1 and getting out $2. It's getting closer and closer to we're losing money every time we increase the types of actions that we have been doing. So we have to do two things. We actually have to understand that that's happening, and then we have to look for other actions to do instead and redeploy that resource. And so what Nancy and I have tried to do is we've tried to say, let's move we know that sales professionals can close. So let's move the things that are preventing them getting in the way of selling time upstream. And in that process, let's redeploy and redefine some of those tasks. So yes, this is about real change management, but the first breakthrough is admitting that what was working before COVID is not what's working now. And so we must accept that we have to change. That acceptance is going to happen as you build the pipeline partnership between marketing and sales. It's a management level thing. You could talk about it at any level, but unless your colleague across the aisle joins with you in this is not going to work. So we're really saying these are almost executive level, and certainly they'll get up to the executive level conversation. That's the only way you can get people to say, wow, we've got this whole infrastructure for doing cold calling. What are you saying we do with that? Well, we're saying you're going to change that. And that's a management decision. So you do have to get management together to start driving this change.
Great. Well, that's just about all the time that we have today. I appreciate everyone who stayed on a little bit longer. We packed a ton of really good information into a relatively short time. So I wanted to thank the presenters, both John and Nancy, for delivering this really great, insightful information today. And I hope that the attendees walked away with some really good, actionable advice and steps to move forward with. With that, we're gonna end the webinar and really thank you for attending today, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.